Assalamualaikum warahmatullah.
We extend to you the greeting and we say peace be upon those who follow the guidance. I would like to proceed by reciting a verse from the Quran which is appropriate for this subject that we will talk about today. It is mentioned in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran this verse, and it is appropriate for us to recite this verse in the light of the topic which we will be discussing. The verse says, O mankind, fear your guardian Lord who created you from one single soul. So this establishes, first of all, that the concept of the male and the female in Islam is one of equality. That's one. One of equality, not sameness. Sameness means exactly the same in their anatomy, exactly the same in their psychology, exactly the same in their social role. They are not the same. But they are the same and equal in the sight of God, because they have been created from one single soul. So the whole idea that Adam and Hawa, or Adam and Eve, they were created from one single substance. So in the sight of God, they are equal, and their status is equal. وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا. And from this single soul, God created the mate of Adam, Hawa, or Eve, as we say in the English language. وَبَثَ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. And created from them, extracted from them, a posterity of a countless number of male and females. So in the world today, there may be some 6 billion people. From that time when they were first created, we don't know how many people. So God says countless number of males and females. Meaning of different diversities, different nationalities, different ethnic backgrounds. But from the male and from the female, and from one single soul. So he says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهُ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ. So fear Allah and be mindful of God, by whom you demand of each other your mutual rights. You see, it is the mutual rights we are demanding from each other all the time. The man, he's expecting his rights. The woman is expecting her rights. The husband is expecting his rights. The wife is expecting her rights. And the children, they are expecting their rights. And where do those rights come from? The one who has created that single soul. So God says, fear God, be mindful of God, by whom you demand of each other, through marriage, through relationships, your mutual rights. Then he says, and be mindful and respectful of the wombs that gave you life. Now he adds something special to the verse because he wants to bring out the special position and reverence for the women. And fear God, he says, and give reverence to the wombs that gave you life. Who are the wombs that gave us life? Our mothers, eventually our sisters, our daughters, our wives. So God is adding something special to this verse, telling the men, give a special reverence, give a special sensitivity, give a special position to the wombs that bore you life. So therefore, this is consistent that the Prophet ﷺ was asked by a man one day. He said, O Messenger of Allah ﷺ, which one of my parents should I give more reverence to? My mother or my father? And the Prophet ﷺ said, your mother. And the man said, and who next? He said, your mother. And he said, and who next? He said, your mother. And he said, and who next? He said, then your father. Here the Prophet ﷺ was trying to say to this man, on the basis of reverence and respect, your mother, your mother, your mother. And in another place the Prophet ﷺ said, although many of the muhaddithin, they said this is a weak hadith, he said paradise is at the feet of your mother. That means serving your mother. You want paradise? Serve your mother. He didn't say paradise at the feet of your father, he said serve your mother. So here we have the sensitivity given by the Quran itself, by the Prophet ﷺ himself, the reverence and the respect that must be given towards the women. Now if such respect has been denigrated, if such respect or reverence has been undermined by Muslims anywhere in the world, it is because of their cultural, ethnic thinking. It has nothing to do with Islam, because after all, who are Muslims? They're just human beings. They're just human beings. There are people claiming to be Muslim. There are people claiming to follow the Quran. There are people claiming, you understand me, that they are embracing God's law. But they're just human beings. And in many cases, and I might say today, in most cases, Islam and the practice of Islam is trapped inside of cultural pockets and bottles. And so when people see that Muslims are doing things un-Islamic, repressive, oppressive, ignorant, it is because of their culture. And we must break that culture and bring the Muslims back to Islam. However, this has nothing to do with what the Quran says. This has nothing to do with what the Prophet ﷺ's example is. And what we want to talk about here today is the critical issues concerning Muslim women in the light of the Quran and the prophetic behavior of the Prophet ﷺ. Not the critical issues that are facing women in their various Muslim, ethnic, national societies. That's something different. And as a sociologist, I will tell you, it is something quite different. And we can't address all of that here today, because we may be here, we may need several sessions to do that. We may need some more objective speakers to do that. And we might have to take you all the way around the world into 27 different Muslim countries to see what is Islamic and what is Muslim. And if we want to also discuss this issue, we should not leave it just to the critical issues of Muslim women. We should talk about the critical issues of women all over the world. Because as we purvey the status of women in the Western societies, we will see that in spite of this technological phenomena, and in spite of all of this so-called democratic procedure, and in spite of all the intellectuality, we see that women in the West have been denigrated to an extent beyond any time in history. But that's another subject. From a sociological point of view, we may need to have another seminar, a whole conference to discuss this issue. But today, we want to discuss the critical issues facing Muslim women in the world that they live in today. And I would say to our non-Muslim guests, if you will be patient, and if you will be open-minded, and if you will be objective for a moment, we will even address some of the phenomena or the issues that have been come up in the press recently. And we'll discuss some of the Islamic or some of the Muslim misconceptions, some of the Muslim misbehavior, some of the Muslim aberrations concerning Muslim women. But we want to separate the two. Muslim, Islamic. A Muslim is just an individual. But the Islam has its own sources, that is the Quran. Islam has its own sources in the behavior of the Prophet ﷺ. And I would say to you that if we separate those two behaviors, the Quran, the sources, the Islamic, the prophetic behavior on one side, and then the Muslim behavior on the other, we will see where those misconceptions lie at. The basic position of Islam is that relative to the creation of the male and the female, they are equal in their status. They're equal in their status in the sight of God, and they're equal in their status in the sight of man. No opportunities are prevented, or women are not prevented from any opportunities that are accessible to men. But we want to go back to the other statement that they are not the same. And unfortunately, although certain legislation and certain recent behaviors in the world have stretched the subject of femininity to the degree where women are forced to pronounce themselves in such a way they got to be the same. They want to do everything men can do. And then what happens? Men want to do everything that women want to do. Men want to have babies. It's crazy. Women are marrying women. And men are marrying men. And they also want to have families. And they also want to they want to adopt children. I say that's crazy. We are stretching the issues. We are creating an aberration, and we will create another race. And they will be something, and they will produce something other than what God has intended. Because they're not the same. Men and women are not the same. They don't have the same psychological properties. They don't have the same physiological properties. They're not biologically the same. They're not psychologically the same. They're not emotionally the same. And their social roles are not the same, in spite of the people who want to make them the same. And Islam makes no apology by saying that the men have their place in society and the women have their place in society, and that place has not been designated by the men, nor has it been designated or legislated by the women. It has been designated and legislated by Almighty God, who is the creator of the male and the female. Now, of course, we understand that there's some people that might be even in this room, or some other people who say that, well, we don't even believe in God. Well, that's fine for you. Believe in what you want to believe in. There's some people who say that we don't even believe that the male and female was created by any type of God. We believe they were always here. There was male and female apes or male and female dinosaurs. That's okay. Believe in what you want to believe in. But we have no apology to say we are in agreement with the Christians and the Jews to say that God is the creator, and as a creator, he has fashioned us as part of his creation. And we don't apologize for that. As a matter of fact, if we Muslims and Christians and Jews put all of our monotheistic power together, we are the majority in the world today. So let's just say that we all believe in creation. That's right. 1.6 billion Muslims, 1.3 billion, or let's just say 1.5 billion Muslims, 1.5 billion Christians and Jews. We represent 3/4 of the world, so it's creation by vote. Is that democratic? So on the basis of that, since we got at least a consensus on that issue, then we can move forward now. We say that the male and the female, they are not the same, but they are the same in the sight of God. They're equal in the sight of God, and therefore God's law should reflect that they are also equal in their social aspirations. Unfortunately, Islamic issues of women have been complicated and polluted by nationalism, culture, and ethnic preferences. I said it again. Nationalism, culture, and ethnic preferences. So, according to where you want to go in the Muslim world, you will see different types of ideas. And I'll be honest with you. I have been to 37 countries. 23 of those countries, Muslim countries. Whether Muslims are in the minority or the majority, Muslim countries. And I have been shocked at some of the nationalistic, cultural practices and ethnic practices among Muslims relative to women and other things. But then in my own maturity, I had to accept that these are just Muslims, these are just human beings. So I also will tell you that in my travels around the world, I have also visited all of the major so-called Judeo-Christian countries. The one that I was born in, Bushland, USA. the one that I was born in, the UK, Australia, all the major Judeo-Christian countries. And regarding women in particular, I'll tell you the truth, it is the most depressing when it comes to the status of women. It is the most depressing in the world today. You can't even buy a chocolate bar without seeing a naked woman. It's unbelievable how they take and denigrate our daughters. 12 years old. I remember Britney Spears when she was just 9 years old, singing songs with ribbons in her hair. And look at her today. Isn't it unfortunate? They have taken this girl and made this girl just a total package of capitalism. And in the course of it, they've turned this little young innocent girl into a wide-scale global prostitute. I'm sorry if there's somebody here that's related to her, but that's just the issue. That's where she is. That's the issue. And I could take a number of others of any different ethnic background. It doesn't matter. It's just that the media and Chollywood and Bollywood and Hollywood and what they want to do with the female and what the exploitation and the oppression and the repression that they have done to the woman to such an extent that there is nothing left for the sanctity of women at all. And they don't care about schools, and they don't care about churches. In the UK, you can go to a school and a church on both sides of the street and write a big billboard. A naked woman is sitting right there, and nobody can say anything. I can't understand it. How has the world gotten to an extent that capitalism and commercialism itself can just rule our senses and undermine and just override our moral sense of dignity? A church, a school, and a picture of a naked woman or a naked man right on the billboard, right next to the school, right next to the church. And we, as the moral majority, we can't say anything. I say that's a denigration of the female. I say that's a denigration. That's an aberration. That's an undermining. That's demoralization. That's repression. But that's a different subject. I just want to be balanced and say to you that I am abhorred when I have visited some Muslim countries, and I am abhorred with some of the Western civilization countries that I have visited or live in regards to the issue of the female. So let's be balanced when we approach this topic. Islam, unfortunately today, is in a prison. Now that prison is not Abu Ghurab, and that prison is not, what's the place in Cuba? Guantanamo Bay. That's not where Islam is in prison at. No, Islam is in a prison of Muslim nationalism, Muslim ethnicity, Muslim culture. Because Muslims, every single group of Muslims want to put Islam and trap it and wrap it in their own ethnicity. Because human beings have done that throughout the years. They want to take the religion of God and they want to put it in their own bottle. They want to market it in their own name, under their own language, under their own culture. And if it were not for the basic precepts of the Aqidah, meaning the monotheistic practice of Islam, some Muslims would also make an Arab God, an Indian God, a Pakistani God, an African God, another God. They would do that. Because this is the nature of human beings to do that. But fortunately, the first principle of Islam is La ilaha illallah. That there's none to be worshipped except Almighty God, and there should not be any depictions. And this is not an anthropomorphic concept. God should not be depicted as a man, or as a woman, or as a child, or as a tree, or as a bird, or as the sun, or the planets. And God is not in the world, but God has created the world. And the world is creation, and God is the creator. And since most Muslims, I say 95% of all Muslims will observe that, then we cannot make a cultural, nationalistic, or ethnical representation of God. But Islam as a faith, unfortunately, has been subdued and has been trapped by culture. And because of this, many misconceptions, many distortions, Many misrepresentations have taken place regarding Islam, and you Muslims and we Muslims should be very honest that some of those misrepresentations and some of those distortions is not the fault of non-Muslims, whether the media or private citizenship. Some of it is the fault of Muslims themselves. And we must be honest about that. We should not be in denial about that. We should not always be pointing the finger at somebody else. No. If I'm standing behind a cracked glass, I should not get an attitude when people see a distorted figure. Maybe I should remove that cracked glass. Or I should move away from it so people can get a clear view. Then what they get a clear view about, then I will say, why are you still saying something distorted when I'm giving you a clear view? Islam is in the prison of nationalism. Islam is in the prison of culture. And Islam is in the prison, the confines of ethnic preferences. And it can only be released by the practice and the use of the sources of Islam, which are the Quran and the Sunnah. And I repeat that for our non-Muslim guests. If you want to know something about Islam, the source you need to go to is the Quran, not the Muslims. The next source you need to go to is the prophetic behavior of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are the legislative sources of Islam. These are the religious sources of Islam. And if you want to know anything, you must go to the sources. I will not know about New Zealand by just walking down the street and seeing some people from New Zealand and say, I know everything about New Zealand. Look how these people are. No, I have to know about the language, to know about the history, to know about the culture. I have to go to the Chamber of Commerce. I go to the town hall. I have to go to the museums. I have to go to the universities. I have to talk to the people, you understand, who are the common people. I got to talk to the intellectual people. I got to talk to people in government. I got to talk to the people in neighborhoods. I got to talk to male and female, the children. I got to look at the whole package to understand what is this country called New Zealand. What are their values? What are their principles? What is their legislation? What kind of government do they have? Then I can, if I am still an objective person, I can then make a well-rounded decision, or I can make a well-rounded opinion or assessment and say, I have visited New Zealand, and when I transfer that idea to people, and if I am still objective, probably I have tapped into the sources. I say that a non-Muslim cannot look at a Muslim woman and say, oh, see how these Muslims are? And see a Muslim man say, oh, see how these Muslims are? Or read a headline in the news and say, oh, see how those Muslims are? No, that's not fair. That's not objective. It's not being comprehensive. Most of you have a computer home. If you want to know about Islam, you don't even have to talk to Muslims. If I want to know about the stock market, I don't have to go down to the stock market. I don't have to go to the stock exchange. I can go right, I can put in Google. Google, gaggle, giggle, whichever you got. And just put in Quran, Quran, put that in. See what comes up. Put in Muhammad ibn Abdullah, because you get a whole lot of Muhammads. But put the son of Abdullah, because that's the first Muhammad, and the first Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the prophet and the messenger of God. Peace and blessing of Allah be upon him. Then you look to the sources. What is the Quran as a book? What is the Quran as a source of legislation? What is the Quran as a source of inspiration? What is the Quran as a source of education? What is it? Who is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What is his biography? What is his manner? What were his habits? What were his principles? What is his legacy? Look at it, study it, take a day, take 2 days. If you're really concerned, take 3 days. Make an objective study. After you do that, then start seeing Muslims in the history, in the present, and see what has happened to these Muslims. See how they've been shattered and spattered and splattered all over the world. And see why they themselves are presently in a disarray. And people who are in transition, people who are in disarray, they cannot themselves reflect the true sources of their beliefs. And that is being fair. As a historian, as a sociologist, as an educator, as a teacher, I have to take all those things into consideration when I talk about the Muslims, when I talk about Islam, when I talk about the Quran, when I talk about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when I talk about the phenomena of Islam and Muslims in the modern world today. I have to take all those things into consideration. And I think that any one of you non-Muslims who are even-minded people, decent people, objective-minded people, open-minded people, people who themselves are not filled with prejudice, who haven't already made up their minds before they examine the sources, I think any one of you will go home and reread and rethink and reassess. And I think that you will be surprised with what you come up with having done that. For us Muslims, we have to bring our thoughts, ideas, and feelings into accordance with what Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought. And what is that? The Quran and the Sunnah. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, none of you truly believes until you bring your hawa, your desires, your feeling, your ideas, your emotions into accordance with what I have brought. That means he said, la yu'min. You're not a believer. You can say you are a Muslim, but you're not a believer until you bring your desires, your feelings, and your emotions into accordance, and your inclinations into accordance with what I have brought. What did he bring? He brought the Quran. He brought the Sunnah. He did not bring his Arabism. He brought the Quran and the Sunnah. The Quran as a legislation and the Sunnah as an explanation. So we Muslims must bring our desires, our feelings, our emotions, and our inclinations into accordance with what he brought, Quran and Sunnah. We have a tendency as Muslims to be reactionary. You know, every time somebody pushes a button, we just we just get all out of whack. We go ballistic. And so when people see that we are that way, they just push buttons. You want to get a reaction from those Muslims? Push that button. Or push that button. And so we are just reacting. And people who want reactions because of media and news, they just keep pushing buttons. Well, we should not be buttons to be pushed. At the same token, not only should we not be reactionary people, we should also not be ourselves in denial. We should not be blaming the non-Muslims. We should not be blaming the Christians or the Jews, blaming them for everything that's going on with Muslims all over the world, saying that they are corrupting our religion. They are doing this to us and they are doing that to us. No, this is Muslims in denial. These are Muslims being reactionary. Dear brothers and sisters, the critical issues of women are many and cannot be adequately covered in an afternoon session as this one. Perhaps there needs to be a major conference convened for 3 days with several workshops, seminars, and sessions for propositions. And I really mean that. I think that the proper thing to do would be that in every major country where Muslims are a minority and where Islam has a tendency to be misunderstood, I think that we cannot address this in an afternoon session like this here. It is too profound. It is too multifaceted. We need to have a 3-day conference, and we need to invite some international people, some professional people, some non-Muslim people to interact and discuss these issues and come up with propositions that can be presented to the Parliament, to the Chamber of Commerce, to the educational people, so that a clear picture of what we intend as Muslims and what has been intended by the Quran and the Sunnah can be presented. At the same token, the concerns of the country and its various aspects also can be taken into account, and we come up with propositions and resolutions. But this cannot happen in an afternoon. So what do you think about that, the people in media? What do you think about the people who are intellectuals? What do you think about that, the common people, that we should have a 3-day conference in New Zealand, a 3-day conference in Australia, a 3-day conference in the UK, a 3-day conference in France, and so forth and so on, until a global conference of Muslim leaders, including women, are held to deal with some of these resolutions and some of these propositions. Then I think we might get a different picture of this issue. But since that's only a proposal, my job this afternoon is to try to see if I can just touch upon, skim across the water of some of these issues. So don't blame me if I don't go deep into some of these things you want me to get into. Because I know there's people here who just want to go deep into a couple of little issues here. But I'm not going to do it. I'm going to skim, because there's about 9 or 10 little issues. And the best we can do is skim over them and try to see if we can touch all the little islands in this ocean of information. We would probably want to invite some of the local Australian scholars, or local New Zealand scholars, or scholars of the local international status, students of knowledge, and we may want to invite other internationally known scholars and students of knowledge to assist us in covering this vital topics, Muslims and non-Muslims. These issues involve both the responsibilities of women as well as the rights of women. Although most women would like to talk about their rights, I would say we need to talk about the responsibilities and the rights. That would be the fairest thing to do. Unfortunately, many women want to focus upon their rights while they blatantly disregard or remain ignorant of their responsibilities. We also have to realize that Islamic knowledge, whether it is fiqh, meaning the jurisprudence of Islam, tafsir, the explanation and commentary on the Quran, the seerah, meaning the documented picture and preservation of the Prophet's life, peace and blessing be upon him, whether it be the sunnah, that is the actual authentic sources of what the Prophet ﷺ said or did, or that he remained silent about. Whether we want to go into any of these things, we would also have to realize that this Islamic knowledge remains pointless and abstract without a structure, without a vehicle, or without an institution to house, deliver, and execute them. So therefore, it would not matter how many medical doctors, I'm giving an example here, it wouldn't matter how many medical doctors, professors, or lawyers we had in our society if there were no hospitals, universities, or courts to deliver the actual services to the public. Perhaps this is one of the most glaring and critical of all the issues, because we are, as Muslims, neglecting the major responsibility of building the presence of community. And because we have neglected building the presence of a community, because of that, these aberrations and these misconceptions, they remain as they are. Because the way that issues are addressed in a society, the way that issues are addressed and resolved, it is through the establishment of institutions. When you establish an institution, that institution can study, harness, and resolve problems on an ongoing basis, because as an institution it has the resources to do that. But we Muslims, we are about rituals. We're concentrating on rituals, and we're not concentrating on building institutions. Therefore, most of the blame for our instability is from our own selves and not from others. Of course, that's Khalid's comments. And some of you Muslims may say, I don't agree. That's fine. I'm glad we live in a democratic society. We Muslims want to build masjids, and we want our children to attend Muslim schools. But we are developing the physical and ideological community to support. But are we, I'm asking, but are we developing the physical and ideological community to support this masjid or the school? To illustrate this point, let me give you this example. Muslims come to the mosque for perhaps 15 minutes a day. That is, if you come to the mosque 15 minutes a day, 5 times a day. You come Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. Those are the 5 prayers. So let's say every Muslim, every good Muslim, excluding the women, because the women, they can't come 5 times a day because they're taking care of the children, taking care of their other things. And, you know, this comes into discussion about the social roles of the women. If the women was coming 5 times a day to the mosque like the men is coming 5 times a day to the mosque, where are the children? Who picks the children up? Who drops the children off? Who goes to do the shopping? Who takes care of the home? Who takes care of the home front? The minister of the interior, for the most part, got to be in the interior. And our women, they are the ministers of the interior. That's their social political role that God has given them. And every government has a minister of the interior, and they got also one that's for the, what do they call the minister for the outside? The foreign policy man. Not a foreign policy man. He can't be all in the inside all the time, and the Minister of the Interior outside all the time. Their roles are reversed. So if the men are going to the mosque 15 minutes a day, 5 times a day, and they're going to the mosque 45 minutes on Friday, that's it. All their mosque is finished. It's gone. It's done. 45 minutes on Friday, 15 minutes a day during the day. The mosque and the role of the mosque for the Muslims is finished. So what does the mosque represent for all the rest of that time? Because 5 times a day, 15 minutes is how many? How many minutes is that? That's 75 minutes, isn't it? Is it? That's an hour and 15 minutes. 45 minutes on Jummah, what is that? That's 2 hours. So 2 hours a week, the Muslims are in the mosque, if they're good Muslims. But God gave us 168 hours to live. So what is the rest of the time? 166 hours a week. What role does the mosque play? Ask yourselves, Muslims. It's supposed to be your town hall. It's supposed to be your place of congregation. It's supposed to be a place where you resolve your problems. It's supposed to be your school. It's supposed to be your majlis. It's supposed to be the place where you distribute, you understand me, your charity. It's supposed to be the place, you understand me, where people who have problems. It's supposed to be your religious court. Yes, because even in this country, if the Muslims stood up and asked and expounded, you would get your rights to have your own religious courts. Because in this country, I think, but in Australia and in the UK and other places, in Canada, the Jewish people, because they have stood up and articulated themselves, they have their own religious courts. So why couldn't Muslims do that as a precedent? They call that precedent or precedence. But we're not thinking that way. So I'm illustrating to you. Once or twice a month, Muslims come to the masjid for a 2-hour lecture like this one, or a class. This is good. However, in this process, the masjid administration cannot, and I emphasize cannot, regulate the lives of these people. The rights and responsibilities of Muslim women, just as men, are constitutional. And I want to emphasize that. The rights and responsibilities of women in Islam are constitutional. They're not arbitrary. They're not emotional. And they're not dictated by the men. Because the Constitution of Islam is built upon something called Sharia. Sharia. Sharia comes from the Arabic terminology. It comes from the terminology of a watering place. In the desert, the Arabs were looking for a watering place where they can stop and drink water, and their animals could drink water. And if they could not find a place like that, a person in the desert who couldn't find water, what would happen to them? What would happen? They and their animals would die. Therefore, the watering place was a place of life. And Sharia or Sharia was a place that led towards what? Life or death. So the law in Islam is considered to be what? A matter that regulates what? Life and death. This is how important Sharia is for the life of the Muslim. It came from that Arabic terminology. But here it is not a watering place. It is a place in which the inspiration, the legislation, and the inspiration of God descends upon the human beings in their collective places. So, as a constitution, women, just like men, have constitutional rights, meaning rights that need to be executed, rights that need to be preserved, and rights that need to be guaranteed by the Islamic authority. Unfortunately, Muslims living as minorities in a non-Muslim country, there doesn't exist any Islamic authority. Not that it should not be, there should be. I think if Muslims took natural process to get involved, not to be isolationists, not to be over here in this different ethnic group and this different ethnic group, but to be involved. That is, come out of your houses, come out of your masjids, sit and talk with the people who are in parliament, sit and talk to the people who are in government, sit and talk to the people who are in the Chamber of Commerce, talk to the business people, talk to the people who are involved in community services, talk to the people in education. Bring the best of the minds of the Muslim and talk with them and integrate with them and assimilate with the society, and you'll find that Muslims will develop among themselves a minimal amount of authority over their people. I didn't say rulership, I said authority, influence, legislative influence. Without clearly defined and demonstrated authority, all the beautiful talking, teaching, and preaching remains abstract, weak, and considered optional by the Muslims themselves. Therefore, why should it be respected or regarded as relevant to the society by non-Muslims? I'll repeat what I just said. If Muslims themselves just do a bunch of talking, teaching, and preaching for themselves, and that teaching and preaching is misunderstood, abstract, doesn't have any real application in the society, and Muslims are unstable, and Muslims themselves are destabilized themselves, why should we expect that in a sense of weakness and lack of clarity, why should we expect that other people respect us? Why should we think that they should respect us? No, as a human being, they should respect. We should get respect like everybody else. But why should our beliefs and why should our religion be respected when it is not even understood? So I'm putting the onus on us first. Before we start blaming others, I'm putting the onus on us. If I want my position, if I want my religion, if I want my beliefs, if I want my family, if I want my people, if I want my values to be understood and respected, I must present them in a dignified way. And I must present them as other people in New Zealand. I must use my own constitutional rights as an individual to present my ideas, my beliefs. And I must do it from the top all the way to the bottom, to my neighbor all the way to the Congress. And I must use all the natural means and resources to do so, because that is the way. People do not respect something that is in the basement. You put something in your basement, you forgot it's already there. Well, you're not going to respect it. It's in your basement, but you forgot it's there. You put something in the attic, you know you forgot it's there. It is something valuable. You forgot it's there. It's collecting dust. You're not going to respect it. We Muslims, we are in the basement and we are in the attic of the societies where we live in. Whose fault is that? You're the one that keeps staying in the basement. You're the one that's staying in the attic. Bring it out in the open and be prepared to expound upon it. And do not demand of anybody that they should respect you any more than they respect anyone else. We are not due any more respect than anyone else, regardless of all the fancy talk and what we say about our religion. No, put your case forward like everyone else. If you're in New Zealand, you pay taxes, you are a citizen, your children are here, your family is here, this is where your investments are, and on the basis of being a New Zealand person, then you say, if you believe your values are a better way, we got a right to market our values like everyone else has a right to market their values. But first, you have to become known. You have to become transparent. You have to make disclosures. That's part of the process. Some of the critical issues of Muslim women, among the many critical issues that need to be clarified for people to understand, is issues about, like, let's take this one that just most recently, this issue about the beating of women. Let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple of people here tonight that just want to hear that issue. So let's talk about that for a minute. This beating women issue, let's clear this up in a very nice way. First of all, let us just first say that neither the Quran nor the prophetic behavior, it promotes beating women. No, because if you just take what they call it a bit, when they want to do a commercial or they want to take something somebody said, what they call it, a sound bit. You just take out a couple of words and you just throw it up there. This is not fair because it can be taken out of context. If you want to understand something, you may need to put it into context. You need to take the words before and the words after, and you need to take the whole thing and look at it and say, oh, I accept that, I reject that, oh, I understand that. But you can't take a sound bit, extract it out and throw it up there and say this. Because, did you know that maybe until just recently, I don't know this society, I didn't study yet this, but in the Western world, my country, Bush country, in my country, corporal punishment for children was just stopped constitutionally 12 years ago. That means that a male or female, a father or a mother, if their children was getting out of order, they can slap them up a little bit. And even, they were using this. You know, broken in half a little bit. And just 20 years ago, I went, well, no more than 20 years ago. Let me not fabricate that. 40 years ago, a little bit further than that. 50 years ago, when I went to a little grade school, a little bad boy school. Yeah, I was in a little bad boy school. It's all boys because we was all bad. And they put us in this school to kind of like modify our behavior. One of the rights that the teachers had in that school was that all the teachers had a little thing like that. And if you got out of line, the teacher told you to come outside, and he just whacked you about 5 or 10 little whacks. And after he gave you those couple of little whacks, he asked you, you want to go inside or you want some more? That's how they modified our behavior. And I'll tell you the truth of the matter. That modification was good for me. I graduated from that school as the valedictorian of that school because it modified my behavior. That kind of behavior now in America is unconstitutional. Even a parent today in America cannot use that kind of corporal punishment in their homes. As a matter of fact, I just read in Copenhagen, Denmark, I'm sorry, that a child is able to take their parents to court and divorce the parents. Yeah, you have an argument with your children. You tell your children shut up and go to bed, or whatever the case might be, they say you're oppressing them. You tell them what time to be home, they say you're oppressing me. You tell them what to wear, they say you're oppressing me. You keep cooking the same food every night, you're oppressing me. So children say, I don't want them parents anymore. So the children can find some advocates on their behalf, and they go get a lawyer. The lawyer brings the children in the court, the parents in the court, and the children want to divorce the parents and take, you understand me, surrogate parents. This in Denmark. I say that's stretching the issue a little bit too far. But yes, I say that in America there was a time when parents could arbitrarily modify their children's behavior by beating them. But today, almost in every Western society today, you cannot do that anymore. If you beat your children, you can go to jail. So that's why children can spit in the parents' faces today. Children can kick. I seen a little child in the supermarket. The mother was trying to tell the child something. The child kicked the parents. I seen it in a cartoon the other day. Mother was talking to the parent, the child just spit in the mother's face. Shut up. What can the parent do? She can't slap him. If she slaps him, she's going to jail. So we come up with a situation where the children are ruling the parents. But this is because of the conflict of issues, the conflict of interests in the society. So I'm saying, in Western society, if it were permitted to beat women, beat children, just recently, but now today we say this is not common usage, it is not constitutional, it cannot be done. We say that because of the progression of the sensitivities of the society. Whether we agree or we disagree, we Muslims, according to what the Prophet ﷺ said, he said, when your children get to be 7 years old, teach them to pray. And if they don't pray when they're 10 years old, give them a little bit of that. He didn't say slap them around, beat them around, you know what I mean, bust them over the head, chain them to a refrigerator. That's what he said do. No, he said, give them a little bit of that. A little encouragement. But we would say today that if a Muslim child is 10 years old and you give them a little bit of that, they might run off, you understand me, to the council. Run off, you understand me, to the court. Say, my father, mother, they beat me a little bit. Then you're going to jail. So the Islamic rule is that if you're living in a society where that's unlawful, you cannot do that. Do you follow me? So the Quran said, يَضْرِبُهُنَّ, in one of the verses of the Quran, said that when a man has a rebellious wife, that means she's unseemly in her conduct. She come and go, she comes late at night, she does this, she disrespects, so forth. The Prophet ﷺ said, he said, admonish her. That means talk to her. Give her admonition. Tell her how you displeased with her conduct. Warn her, tell her don't do that anymore. Then he says after that, separate from her bed. Separate from the bed. He didn't say separate from the house, separate from the bed. That means continue to do all the responsibilities as normal, but when it comes to conjugal relationships, stop. Don't sleep with her. As a matter of fact, sleep in the same room, but don't sleep in the bed. That means no sex. That's hard. That's just as hard for the man as it is for the woman. But the Prophet ﷺ here is saying, if you really want to control her behavior, or if you really want to admonish her, if you're really displeased with the way she's acting, you deny yourself and you also deny her. SubhanAllah. Then he says that if she continues even after that, then the Quran says, يَضْرِبُهُنَّ. It says, apply light corporal punishment with a context to it. It must not swell. It must not cause bleeding. It must not cause any breakage. And it must not cause any damage to her skin. So what can you do? What kind of beating is that? Secondly, it must not be on any one of her parts of her body, okay, which are the sensitive parts of her body. So what kind of, where's that could be? In the bottom of her feet? The third thing, the Prophet ﷺ said that if even doing that, hitting her on the leg or tapping her on the shoulders, or if that would cause a worse reaction, don't do that. Look, subhanAllah, the wisdom. Now let's put it in context. In the Arab society in which this Quran came to the Arabs first, did it? Where did it come first? Came to the Arabs first. So in their society, it was considered something of urf. How many Arabs here know the word urf? Urf. Common usage. Huh? Custom. So among the Arabs, this issue, يَضْرِبُهُنَّ, it was consistent with the urf of the Arabs of that day. It was not outside of the context. It was not abnormal. So when Allah said, يَضْرِبُهُنَّ, to them it was something to modify. Because the Arabs in that day, maybe they just take something like this and beat the wife with it. Or maybe in that day, the man, he had something like this here to beat the wife with. See, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is modifying their behavior, and he's saying, يَضْرِبُهُنَّ خَفِيفًا, very light. And the Prophet ﷺ is saying that even in doing it like that, if it's more, if you don't think you can correct her behavior, because she's getting even more wilder, more arrogant, more boisterous, even from that, don't even do it. Because today, different reactions could happen. If a man separates from the bed, the woman, she might get crazy. If he touch her, she might get more crazy. She might pull out a gun and shoot him. Or she might wait till he go to sleep and do something that other lady did. So if you could anticipate a reaction like that, that would be worse. You couldn't correct the behavior. The Prophet said, don't do it. And let's look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ himself. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ, throughout his entire life, he never even struck an animal. Is it true? The Prophet ﷺ never struck an animal. One of the people that served him all of his life, a companion of the Prophet ﷺ that served him from the time that he was 11 years old until the Prophet ﷺ passed away. He said, I served the Prophet ﷺ throughout his entire life, and he never even said to me, oof. He never even said to me, why you didn't do that? How come you so-and-so? You know, somebody's serving me. And he forgot. I said, what's wrong with you? Didn't I tell you so-and-so? That'd be most of us. The Prophet ﷺ, he never even said to that person, how come you didn't do that? What's wrong with you? That person served him for over 40 years, and the Prophet ﷺ never said that. The third thing, the Prophet ﷺ, he never ever laid his hands on his wife except in a way of kindness, in a way of showing mercy, or in a way of dignity or decency. And there was never in the life of the Prophet ﷺ any complaint by any wife. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, no companions came, no female companions came and said, oh, Prophet ﷺ, your companions who are our husbands, they are beating us and they are this and they are that. No, this wasn't among the Prophet ﷺ's time. This wasn't done because he did not approve it. So even though the Quran, based upon the urf of the Arabs, even though the Quran said this, The Prophet himself, what did he do? He didn't do it. He wasn't disobedient to God. It was just that the Quran says certain things for us as a last resort that we don't have to do. Allah said in the Quran regarding the women, plural marriage, He says, Mathna aw thulatha aw ruba'. He says 2, 3, or 4. Yes. There's a wisdom behind it. You women wouldn't say there's no wisdom behind it, but there's a wisdom behind it. We can discuss this in a different issue, a different setting, but there's a wisdom behind it. But look, did the Prophet ﷺ say to us, a man, he had to take 2, 3, 4? No, he didn't. In fact, God said, He said, one is better for you if you only knew. Did He say that? One is better if you only knew. In another place He said that even though He said, Mathna aw thulatha aw ruba', He said, you men can never be fair with women. So look what, God is discouraging it. He's telling you, warning you, one is better if you only knew. He's warning you, watch out. You're going to get yourself in trouble. You're going to upset the cart. There's some reactions going to come. There's going to be some fitna. One is better if you only knew. But for those who fall within the category and the social, political, psychological conditions are of sort where their women outnumber the men and there are no prospective men to marry those women, then God says 2, 3, or 4. But did you know that in the Muslim world, only 1 out of 715 men, this is a statistic you brothers need to keep in mind, sisters, only 1 out of 715 Muslim men are going to take another wife. Doesn't that feel good for the other 714 sisters? Now God gave the permission. This is not us. But 714 men, either because they're afraid or because their situation doesn't allow it, they can't afford it, they don't have enough body, they don't have enough mind, they don't have enough money. 714 brothers, they're not going to do it. Does that make some of you sisters happy? So one of the 714 sisters, 15 sisters is in here, you will have a second or a third wife, it's possible. But then it may not matter because your husband probably, he's rich. If he gives you all the things you want and, you know, he got another wife too, but you got all the things you want, you know, it might make it work for you. But the issue here is, even though God said that in the Quran, do we have to do it? No. So this issue of women beating is taken out of context. If a man in Australia or New Zealand or the UK or America, Muslim or otherwise, chooses to beat his wife, you're going to jail. Unless she's silly enough to let you do it without reporting it. Because if I was the father of the daughter who was beaten, we might all go to jail. You go to jail for beating my daughter and I'll go to jail for beating you. So this issue, the Muslim ladies in the UK, in America, in New Zealand, Australia, because of the urf of this society, you don't have to worry about that. Don't take it out of context. And we're not violating the Quran if we don't beat our women. We're not violating the Quran. What we're doing, we're suspending the enactment of that because the urf. We're not doing that. Therefore, we need to pass this issue up because it does not have meaningful application in our society today. So can we move on to some of the other critical issues here? Thank you. The next thing is about the hijab, the wearing of the headscarf for the women. This seems to have become so major, a major aggravation. Why should women who want to wear a veil, why should this have been such a source of aggravation today? Why is that? I don't understand it. I mean, if a naked woman walked in this room here, meaning wearing a bikini or a G-string, she would have the right to just walk just like anybody else. If a woman came down here and she was wearing a G-string and walked right across here and went back upstairs and came down, matter of fact, there was 2 or 3 of them, we would be like, whoa. What's going on here? But we couldn't say anything because it is accepted in the society for a woman to wear this in public. And there are some beaches in this country and some places in this country where you got some people call themselves naturalists. You know what they are. I don't have to tell you. That is, they believe that they should just walk around all the time naked. Now that we can't make a judgment call, because according to legislation, the naturalists have a right. There's a man that was running across the whole UK for 3 months. Can you imagine that? 3 months with nothing but a hat and a pair of boots on. I mean, he's running. Can you imagine a man running through a village? Nothing but a hat and a pair of boots on. Because he's a naturalist and these are his constitutional rights. And for 3 months, nobody could say anything about it. Well, I say that in a society where people are allowed to express themselves that way, why should there be a problem about Muslim women, whether in the schools or otherwise, choosing the preference to cover their heads or to cover their bodies with loose garments? Why should there be such an uproar? Why is there the need for the media to assault and say Muslims want to take over our society and Muslims want to impose their values upon us and so forth? Well, I want to remind them that until 15 or 20 years ago, the nuns in the church, in the Catholic Church, they had to wear it. Is it right or wrong? And just recently, the Catholic Church has relaxed the uniform codes of the nuns where they can show a little cleavage. They can now wear a little bit, you know, put the cross right there in the middle. They don't have to wear a headpiece anymore, and they can show a little bit of thigh. Well, that's their right. We can't say anything about that. But when I went to church, to the Catholic Church, when I was 17 years old, all the nuns were looking like the sisters are looking today. So society has changed, but why should our values have to change? Those Muslim ladies who want to wear the full scarf and want to wear loose clothing, they're doing so because God said so, not because their husband said so, not because they're Arabs or Indonesians or Malaysians or Africans. No, they're doing it because God says so. So if our religion, which is the same religion of Moses and Abraham and David and Solomon and Jesus and John the Baptist, if we have the same religion as all of those prophets, and we are all monotheistic people basically, Christians and Jews and Muslims, taking our sources from the same, taking our scripture from the same sources, and we can see in the history of our religions that women dress this way consistently, then why is it an aberration because our women want to wear that today? What do they want our women to do? Do they want our women to take off their head scarves and all put on G-strings? Would that be sad? Or now y'all all the same, now it's okay. No, we say it's not okay. And we say, as Muslims, we have the right to preserve what we consider to be decent and dignified clothing and apparel and appearance. And we think that we are fortifying. We think that we are making a good moral contribution. We think that we are doing something that will support the morals, the principles and the status of women in this society. We say that's what we think we're doing. And do we have the constitutional right to make what we consider to be a moral contribution to the fiber of this society based upon our religion? Of course we do. And we don't have to apologize. And if somebody wants to know, if we are unable to explain, we do not have to explain. But what we should do is, the people of the media, or the people of government who feel that they don't understand what's going on, we should send them to people who are qualified to expound upon this issue in a dignified, educated way, so that people would not think somehow or another that all these women who are wearing these scarves got an AK-47 underneath their scarves, or they got a bomb, they coming inside somewhere with a bomb. You know, stereotypes. But the issue is, we Muslims, the Muslim ladies in particular, You do not have to explain to anybody why you are dressed the way you are dressing. Just like others who are undressed do not have to explain to anybody why they are undressed. It's a matter of choice. Unfortunately, if I'm living next door to some people who choose to be naturalists, I can't say anything. The only thing I can do is move. And if they live next door to me and my wife is dressed like that, they can't say anything. All they can do is what? Move. That's the society we're living in, where everybody has free movement. And we have to deal and be patient with each other. What about this issue of forced marriage? Forced marriage, where Muslim men are forcing their daughters to get married to who they want them to get married to. This is un-Islamic. This is cultural. This is cultural. This is un-Islamic. There's nothing in Islam called forced marriage. Those who are doing it based on their tribal, ethnic, cultural practices. How is a father going to force his daughter to marry somebody? I mean, she don't even know this guy. But because that's his cousin, or that's the son of his brother, or that's his family, that's somebody, for the guy, they Bangladeshi, so she would take her to Bangladesh and force her to marry, and then after they get married, give him a card where he can come back. No, no, no. This is oppressive. This is repressive. This is un-Islamic. Also, it's unconstitutional. As a matter of fact, I think that in New Zealand, it is also against the law. I think that in the UK, it's against the law. In America, it's against the law. And it should be against the law, because nobody has the right to do that. However, if a father has a daughter that is 16 and he thinks that she's a little bit active, and you know, she's already kind of like looking at boys and boys looking at her, and they interact in SMS messages and blah blah, all that kind of stuff going on, he said, hold it, wait a minute now, I can't, she ain't gonna last in no uni. You know, before she finished the uni, there might be something else going on. So he said, look, I'm gonna make some arrangements right now. So he begins to make an arrangement for his daughter to get married. And he says to her, listen, there's a young man that I met. He's working, I know his family, and I think it would be good for you to marry him. This is not a forced marriage, this is called an arranged marriage. So her parents and his parents arrange for them to be married. And those people, they agree. Those young people agree. And so the young girl, she goes to live with his parents, or he comes to live with her parents, because they're young, they're still in school. This is called an arranged marriage. Islam says nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. Why? Because the arrangement was done out of the protection of the children and out of the well-being and by the consent and everything of the parents. But Islam says when that girl becomes herself an adult and she don't like that marriage because she couldn't make all the choices, she couldn't look into the whole background, she don't like it. She wake up one day and say, look, this ain't the right guy. Or he's not really working. He was working, but he's not working now. He doesn't want to go to school. I finished school. This guy, you understand, wants to sweep the streets and hang out in the streets. I'm going to become a doctor. It's not going to work. She has the right to annul that marriage. That's what Islam says. So we say that's fair. She got married out of the consent, out of the will of her parents, out of concern of her parents, to protect her, to protect the honor of the family and everything. But when she gets to become an adult, she can make her own decisions, and she can do what? She can annul that marriage. So there is no forced marriage in Islam. Let's talk about the issue of female circumcision. You know, you got all these feminists going over to Africa and all this here. I mean, they don't want to feed the people. They don't want to build no houses for the people. They don't want to change the social conditions of the people. But all of a sudden, they enter this frenzy about female circumcision. Oh, I mean, how can they do something like that? Well, we say that this is not an Islamic practice. That's a cultural practice. And if Muslims are doing that, that horrendous type of action, this is un-Islamic, and if they were in a society like ours, they would be punished. So it's un-Islamic. Unfortunately, it's a tribal practice which is widespread in different parts of Africa and different parts of Asia. Unfortunately, it is widespread, but it is not Islamic. It is tribal. It is ethnic. It is cultural. It has nothing to do with Islam. Islam doesn't support that. So let's separate this issue and say, yes, Muslims are doing that, but it is not Islamic. Now, the reasons why Muslims are doing it, they say they're doing that to modify the agitation and the tendencies of women towards becoming too sexually explicit and motivated and seductive and so forth and so on. Yeah, I don't have to get into the details. Y'all know what I'm talking about. But Islamically, it's a mutilation. It's a mutilation. But look, let's look at some other mutilations. Nobody's saying anything about that. I mean, let's look at our little brother Michael Jackson. Now, I knew Mike. I knew Mike when Mike was 11. See, when he was just 11. And Mike was just as brown as I am. And when I had hair, Mike's hair was just like mine. So I don't know how all that stuff came. I don't know where. And Mike didn't have no dimples here, and Mike didn't have no puckered lips, and Mike didn't have no bleached skin, and Mike didn't have a whole other stuff. I don't know what happened. That is mutilation. But it's called, in America, in modern society, it's called cosmetic surgery. So in this country, they say, instead of saying mutilation, they say cosmetic surgery. When it applies to what's happening with those tribes, they call it mutilation. No, I say cosmetic surgery is mutilation. And unfortunately now, did you know now that cosmetic surgery takes up for 26% of all surgery in the world? 26%. That means 1 out of every 4 surgical procedures in the world are done for cosmetic reconstruction. And they get paid more money than engineers to reconstruct and destruct people's lives. So I'm putting this into context to say it's still not Islamic, no matter how people want to try to justify it. So it is something Muslims do, but it has nothing to do with Islam. Now, about women working. Women have the right to work in any field that they want to work in, Muslim women. They can be doctors, they can be lawyers, they can be engineers, they can be dentists, they can be teachers. And if a Muslim woman, she want to put on combat boots and all that, and AK-10, she want to go to Iraq or wherever, she want to fight and the tanks and in the trenches, and she want to battle with men and do karate, and if she want to do combat, she could be G.I. Jane. If that's what she really wants to do. Islam does not prevent her from doing that, but what Islam does is to discourage her from that, because Islam says, look, sister, now you might be pumping iron, you know, you might be doing karate and all that. You might be taking all kind of additives and supplements and building your body up, and you know, you might be taking things to suppress hormones, and you might shave your hair off and put on the boots and everything. But I'll tell you, when you get out there in combat with a brother who did just as much iron pumping as you will not be able to sustain the level of combat like a man. Now, if any sisters think they can, then you go out, just put on a uniform, go out there and fight. But history says that no country was so foolish as to send a regiment of women out to fight against a regiment of men. I ask you, is anybody here knows of any country in the world that has sent out a regiment of 2,000 women to fight against a regiment of 2,000 men, all of them the same equipment? Did they? Never in the history of the world. Why? Because we understand that basically, although women can do what is called combat support, Women can be present on the battlefield. Women can even dress in battle gear. They can get engaged, but they do not have the ability to sustain over a period of time the same intensity of direct combat as men. That's because males are not the same as women, and women are not the same as men. Now, I'll tell you on the other side, it has been discovered that when it comes to combat support, that means logistics, crunching the figures, find out where the tanks is at and all kind of stuff like that, women are able to do better combat support than the men. And you know what I found as a teacher? I'll tell you something else I discovered. I discovered that in my class, in the high school class, when I gave my female students an assignment to do, when I gave my female students homework to do, when I gave them classwork to do, when I gave them assignments like that, do you know the women in the class, the young girls in the class, they always outperform the boys. The girls came back, their assignments were typewritten. Their assignments were neat. Their assignments were thorough. Their assignments were attractive. They put them into those slide and folders. The boys always just scribble some stuff. The boys never did the research. The boys are always late. The boys always got excuses. The boys are always in the class jumping around, pushing each other. So we say that intellectually, and I'll say this to you, it is my understanding from historical research that in many cases, women are able to intellectually outperform men. Thank you very much. But it doesn't mean that they are not equal in their access. So in Islam, women can work in any field they want to work in. However, Islam discourages them from work that may compromise their morals, may endanger them from a moral standpoint of view. A type of work that might put them in a situation where they're coming home late at night. A situation where they might be prey or victim. A situation where a woman is working by herself with men. A situation where she's married and her being in khalwa, that is her being in seclusion with men, might cause some kind of pollution on her reputation of sort. So Islam discourages that. But as for women being able to work, have their own businesses, being professional, go to school, have free access to education, Islam puts no limitations on them. Only what Islam does is Islam puts it into perspective to protect them, to guard them, their interests as mothers, as daughters, as sisters, and as wives. The issue of plural marriage, we talked about that a little bit. The issue of social representation. Women must be represented in the society as they are, as human beings. They have the right, if there's a Congress, women should be able to serve on the Congress. If there's a Senate, they should be able to serve on the Senate. If there's a board of trustees of a corporation, they should be able to represent that. Inside the mosque, and let's be clear about this issue, inside the mosque, if there's something called an assembly, a majlis, a gathering, a representation of the Muslims, the sisters should be able to be represented on the majlis. I didn't say that the woman should have the ability to become the imam, because Islamically, the women do not be as the imam for reasons that Islam has justified. That generally the society is represented by the men. The head of the society is the man. That is the general position of Islam. But if there are no men that have the intellectual capabilities, if there are no men who have the moral capabilities, if there are no men who got the physical capabilities, it could happen that a Muslim woman could become the president of that country. It happened in Pakistan. It happened in Indonesia. I mean, it happened in some other places. But we say generally in a Muslim country, this wouldn't happen. But it can happen. But let's talk about the majlis, the gatherings of the Muslims. Can the Muslim lady be on the majlis? Of course she can. Who said she cannot? Who said that Muslim women can't sit and represent the interests of women? represent the issues of children and cannot represent themselves, and women can't vote to see who should become the imam, who should become the amir. Who said that the women can't do that? The Prophet ﷺ didn't say that. The companions of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar ibn Khattab, Uthman ibn Affan, Ali ibn Abi Talib, they didn't say that. No. We didn't say that the Muslim lady should be sitting someplace over in a room by herself with some men. We didn't say that. But we said that that Muslim lady who is a representative, she should be able to have the say-so, the vote, the representation in a fair community of Muslims like anyone else. And those men who say otherwise, they are just having a static, historical idea about the role of women. Women shouldn't come outside the home. All they should do is stay home, go shopping, make sure the food is done when I get home. That's that mentality. But that's not Islam, because let me remind you brothers about that, who think that. Aisha radiallahu anha, who was the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she taught 272 of the scholars of Islam who was companions, tabi'een. She taught 272. Hafsa, she taught 114. So that means that, how does she teach them? She didn't mix with them, but they came outside of her door on a daily basis, and she lectured to them. And she taught them knowledge that only she could have given to them. Secondly, she was the holder of hadith that her father didn't know, that Umar ibn Khattab didn't know, that Uthman ibn Affan didn't know, that Ali ibn Abi Talib, they didn't know. Why? Because they were hadiths dealing with the personal manners of the Prophet ﷺ that only she knew. The other thing is that she was an authority on hadith second only to one other person. Who was that? Abu Hurairah. Only one other companion had more hadith, was more an authority on hadith than Aisha, Abu Hurairah. And thirdly, she was a hafidha of the Quran. That is, she memorized the Quran herself while she was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Muslim women should have social representation. They should have their own right of divorce. That is, if a situation takes place, that woman doesn't want that relationship, she should not be forced in that relationship. The woman there's a front door of divorce and there's a back door of divorce. One is called the right that the male has because he pays the dowry and because he gives the support, the maintenance. The other one is called khula. It is the back door of divorce. And a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ, the first khula in Islam, and she said, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, my husband is one of the best men of Medina. She didn't say nothing wrong. He's one of the best men of Medina. But, O Messenger of Allah ﷺ, I think if I stay with him, I will endanger my religion. That's what she said. And later on, we look and see what happened. She married this man. She married him, and she thought he was a good man and everything. But one day, she saw him walking with two very handsome brothers. And then she seen that he wasn't that good looking. He was walking in the middle of two very handsome brothers. And she said, oh man, this guy. She saw that she had a feeling for a handsome man. And her husband wasn't very handsome. She was honest. She said, he's one of the best men of Medina. But I think if I stay with him, I will endanger my religion. Which means she's saying that maybe she will have feelings for somebody else. The Messenger of Allah asked her, will you give him back the dowry which he gave to you? She said, yes. He said, then give him back the dowry and you observe one iddah. Did he go to the husband and ask? No, he didn't. The Prophet said, give her the khula. This means that Muslim woman, if she goes to whoever is the authority among the Muslims and says, I don't want to be with that man anymore, she can get khula. Nobody can stop her from that. So she has the right of divorce. She has property rights. In fact, you sisters know, and you brothers know, that the wealth resides among the women in our community more so than it resides among the men. You know that. I guarantee that in this room right here, the women got more money than the men. Women can own their property. Women can inherit from their father. They can inherit from their brother. They can inherit from their uncle. They can inherit from their grandfather. They can inherit from their son. But the father, the son, the uncle, they never inherit from the women, but they have to keep on doing what? Taking care of the women. The son got to take care of the mother. He got to take care of his sister. He got to take care of his granny. He got to take care of his aunt. He got to take care of his wife. So the wealth resides among the women because the women do not have to take care of the men. And the women don't have to take care of themselves. So the wealth builds up among the women. And so property rights have been the right of women from the first day of Islam. The last thing, women have the right to vote, and women have the rights to work towards leadership. Now, leadership doesn't necessarily mean the virtual leadership of the nation. But why should not women be having positions to lead and to represent different segments of the society? For instance, Muslims, keep this in mind. In the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu, he was the second Khalifa. This is right after the Prophet ﷺ. There was a woman whom he assigned to be in charge of one of the areas of Medina, the souks of Medina, and she was in charge of that marketplace to do what? To govern how business was done in that part of the marketplace. Some of the companions, they complained to him. They said, Ya Umar, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, how you select this woman when there's many men can do that job? He said, no, you be quiet. That woman is doing the job better than any one of you, and as long as she's doing that job, she is representing me. So if that woman was doing that job, it means that a woman could be in charge of a government department. A woman could be selected, you know, to be in charge of a government administration. And why not? They have minds. They are humans. They are thinking. They are citizens. They have the rights. And if it does not interfere with their ability to take care of their families or themselves and doesn't compromise their morals, yes, they have that right. And it is the duty of the Muslims who are in positions and the society at large to make a determination of their rights. And if any one of you sisters or brothers want to see how that works, maybe you won't see it here. Get on a plane and go to Malaysia. Get on a plane and go to Malaysia. You'll see how it's operating. That's a Muslim country. They have Sharia there. Go and see how it works. We don't say that it's the best representation, but we say it is working. Go and see it. So brothers and sisters, what I'm advocating today is that women, along with the support and encouragement of us men, need to work for the empowerment within the Muslim society. We need to work for the empowerment of women within the Muslim community and the greater community. It doesn't mean creating new roles. It doesn't mean innovative titles. It doesn't mean rearranging what has been determined by Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What it means is wanting our sisters, our mothers, our daughters to be educated, endowed, involved, and having a feeling of confidence and self-esteem. You will find that any nation that has neglected, oppressed, or humiliated their women, they subsequently were isolated, eventually oppressed by others, and today have been humiliated. We men should not feel intimidated or insecure about giving liberties and resources to our women. We should feel blessed and fortunate to be guided by Islam for having the wisdom of the Quran and the Sunnah. I have a few recommendations, however, for our sisters. 1. All Muslim women should adopt a program of Islamic study, including fiqh al-waqi'. All Muslim sisters should engage themselves in study. When you understand Islam, when you understand the Quran, when you understand the Sunnah, you will be empowered by that knowledge and people will not take advantage of you. All Muslim women should evaluate their compliance with the rules of hijab. All Muslim women themselves should understand that the issue of hijab, the proper dress and the moral dress of Muslim women, didn't come from their husbands, didn't come from their societies, it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you should be in compliance with that. All Muslim women should connect themselves to an imam, a Muslim leader, a student of knowledge, or a scholar, to represent them in matters of adjudication. For instance, if there's a problem between you and your husband, you can't always go to the family now, because a lot of times the family members be on the side of the husband. You have to go to a neutral party. You got to go to the imam, or you got to go to a student of knowledge, or you got to go to a scholar. How do you adopt that relationship with them? I don't mean go and sit with the imam. I don't mean go sit with the student of knowledge. I mean build the relationship through seeking the knowledge. So therefore, when you have a situation that needs to be adjudicated, you can contact that student of knowledge or that imam to represent you in that issue of knowledge. All Muslim women should prepare themselves for marriage. and the responsibilities of marriage. So all the sisters who are in this room, all the Muslim ladies who are of the age of marriage, you should begin preparing yourselves for marriage, or you should be asking your fathers or your uncles or your representatives, why haven't some arrangements been made for me to get married? All Muslim women should find out all they can about their respective community, masjid or center. If you don't know what's going on in the masjid, if you don't know what's going on in your center, if you don't know who's the imam, who's the majlis, how they spend the money, what's going on, it's because you don't want to know what's going on. Because if I was a woman, which I am not, I would go and find out what's going on. I want to find out how the money is collected, who's spending the money. I want to find out what the programs, what's going on, why there's no school here, what's the program about the school. I want to find out what's the rights, what's the activities, what's the 5-year plan, what's the majlis. I want to see the Constitution. You got the right. If you put the pressure on these brothers, they will give you your rights. All Muslim women should find out, and I don't care. I don't care if the brothers don't want to invite me back no more. Doesn't matter. What's right is right. And I'll be very honest with the brothers. If you allow the sisters to get involved, I'm going to tell you what will happen. The sisters will make sure the grass is cut. They'll make sure, what do they call that, landscaping. They'll do all the landscaping. They'll have some curtains on the windows. They'll make sure the toilets are clean. They'll make sure the rug is hoovered. They'll make sure all the areas is nice, because women are different from men when it comes to particulars. When you find a mosque which is not sustained, which is not maintained, which is dirty, which is trash all around the place, the outside, the inside, I'll guarantee you there are no women around. When you find a mosque that's well lit, when you find a mosque that's clean, that smells good, you see, where the landscaping is done, when you find a mosque where the children are always there and active and in and out, I guarantee you that's a mosque where the sisters are involved. So I ask you, is the mosque for the men or is the mosque for the community? The mosque is for the community. Sisters, insist upon your involvement. And brothers, do not feel insecure. The mosque don't belong to you. It belongs to the community. All Muslim women should encourage other Muslim women to be energetic and committed to Islamic movement. All Muslim women should respect their husbands, preserve their homes, protect and advise their children, and guard their whole selves, especially their tongues. All Muslim women should be more concerned about the responsibilities than demanding of their rights. All Muslim sisters should learn the basic dawah skills, the propagation of Islam, so that they may discharge this duty among other women in New Zealand. All Muslim women must develop a world view. Don't develop a view of just yourself, just your home, just your family, just your husband, just your local community, but look about the world. Think about Muslim women in the world. Think about the whole world. Think about the society. Think about the nation. Get the whole view. And then when you think about the whole view, then think about yourself, your children, your husband, your family, your community, how it fits in with the nation view, how it fits in with the world view. Then you'll find that you will be more functional. So that they are not narrow-minded and they have confidence that Islam has the capability to address the world issues and to eventually offer the world a new proposition. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I want to really thank the brothers, the Muslim Association of Canterbury. I want to thank the non-Muslims who made the sacrifice to come here today and sit for an hour and 15 minutes or so with us. I want to thank the Muslims who came out, and even those of you who brought your children. And more than that, I want to thank these young Muslim children, those of you who have sat down and remained sitting. I mean, this is like phenomenal. You know, some of you children came and sat and remained disciplined. I want to really thank you. So I want to thank also the local council who has given support or interaction with the Muslims of this area. And I want to thank the media representatives that are here today, in spite of the fact that we did not allow you to film. Because one, I'll tell you why, just to be clear with you. First of all, I'm not a scholar, and therefore I don't want what I have to say to be brought out to the public as if, you know, some international scholar, he said so. That's not fair representation. The other thing is that if the media wants to interview me in particular, where I will be responsible for what I say, I'm willing to meet with them while I'm here. And then I'm responsible for what I say, and the fair representation will not be like depicted for the Muslims in general. The other thing is that we don't want to get caught up in some kind of a, you know, where you get put into a frame, you know, where somebody takes some pictures or takes some footage, and then after that they add some stuff in there, and you don't even know what's going on. So I don't want to do that. So the media people who are here, if you represent the newspaper, or you represent the radio, or you represent the television, then you can meet with my representative. If we can set up an appropriate time, we don't mind, because we got nothing to hide. Nothing at all. And I think that Islam, maybe I can't answer all things, but the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ can answer all things. And we don't mind. We have complete transparency for you. And finally, before we answer some questions, because I'm sure there's a few questions here, when we begin to answer questions, they should be on the topic. The topic is the critical issues concerning women. So don't ask me about bin Laden. I don't know where he is. I never met him, and I'm not responsible for nothing. So let's not even get into that. Okay. So I think before we do, however, answer the questions, I think that we Muslims, we do have to pray. This is a very very problematic question, because of the fact that you're asking me how that might be taken in some maybe 37 different countries in the world where this Muslim woman could be a resident of. Based upon their culture, based upon their tradition, based upon their language, based upon some of the geopolitical dynamics, how would they react? I wouldn't be able to say that. However, let's ask that question a different way. What does Islam say about the Muslim lady who lives somewhere and she decides she wants to what? Maybe you mean she wants to change her religion. Is that what you mean? Because there's a difference. If she simply wants to change her lifestyle, but not her religion, then I don't think really, you understand me, then she's just a situation where there are Muslim ladies that live in Pakistan, Muslim ladies that live in Nigeria, Muslim ladies that live in Morocco, Muslim ladies that live in Saudi Arabia, and for some reason or another, they kind of want to change their lifestyle. Well, the society, each society absorbs that. Every family absorbs that differently. But I don't think really that we can make a case study of it to say that she would be under any less duress than if a woman was born in a Greek Orthodox family and she decided she wanted to marry a Muslim. How would that family feel? How would she react to that? She would be under pressure. There would be some, I think there would be some aggravation there. I think there would be some psychological positioning there. I think that she would be discouraged. She may be prevented. She may be oppressed. She may be punished. She may be, a lot of things could happen. I'm talking about whether she was born Greek Orthodox or whether she was born Muslim. It really all depends upon the fiber of the family, the intellectualism of the family, the society itself. There's a lot of parameters we want to think about. But I don't think that the Muslim woman as a person is under any more duress or any more pressure or would be prevented from her individual or human rights any less than she would if she was born Greek Orthodox or Catholic or any other religion. That's my answer. Brother, I'm a nursing student and I have to be in contact with men and older women, and sometimes it gets really up close and personal. Is this haram? Sometimes I come in contact with them physically. Sister, let me say this to you. If you are a medical student you need to focus more upon medical issues of women. You need to try to minimize your contact with men, especially where you will be forced to be in khalwa with a man to treat him. That means in a separate place where there are no eyes and nobody else, because you will put your reputation, you will put your integrity into question sometimes, because maybe late at night or early in the morning or situation, nobody else is on that floor, nobody else is inside that room, and the man, he got to expose himself or whatever the case might be. So the Muslim lady who is a medical professional, she usually minimizes her medical profession to women, issues regarding women. And sister, look, there are more women in the world than men. So if you were to sort of like guide yourself towards the issues regarding women, I don't just mean gynecology, but I mean, you know, things regarding children, women, you know, family issues, and stay away from as much as you can. However, if you are forced, although that is not your inclination, to by emergency or a situation, special situation, that you have to treat a man, Islam says, as long as you put the best construction and protection on that issue, you can do so. Because on the battlefield, when Muslims needed to be their wounds wrapped, women were serving them. Women was treating them. Women was changing, dressing the wounds. Women, you understand, was giving them water. Women, you understand, had to come in contact with men who was not their husbands or their brothers or their family members. So if the situation calls for it, if there is an unusual set of circumstances, then Islam addresses that unusual set of circumstances. But you should select for yourselves a profession or an area of medicine that generally doesn't put you in that kind of contact to compromise your issue of hijab. And Allah, He knows the best. That's a fiqh question, but it's a fairly general one. That's why I sort of answered it. You can go to the website. There's a website called Islam Today, and it is supervised by Sheikh Salman Auda. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him. It is supervised by him, and he is a wide-minded, qualified, certified scholar that you can be in contact with today. So some of these questions here, go to Islam Today, and there are 4 or 5 other websites. If you come to our website, we will guide you towards that. A lot of these questions can be answered by certified scholars or students of knowledge, inshallah. It says, how can we as Muslims stop negative media coverage of women's rights? You cannot stop it. The only thing you can do is address it. And we want to address it, but you cannot stop it. What you need to do is, Muslims, you need to have 4 or 5 brothers. You need to have 2 or 3 brothers and 2 or 3 sisters who themselves understand the media. They understand the language of the media. They understand the principles and the protocols of media. They understand the major issues that media is addressing. When an issue comes up, don't have people who are unskilled talking in front of the camera, because they're going to trap you. They're going to trick you. They're going to put you in a situation of embarrassment. And later on, you're going to be trying to wiggle out of it, and the more you wiggle, you're going to be more and more and more. It's like quicksand. So don't do it. Always, if somebody asks you a question who's from the media, say to them honestly, listen, I'm not a representative of the Muslim community. I can't speak on behalf of the Muslim community, but I can speak on behalf of myself. But I don't have no qualified knowledge. So after you say that, then the listeners will understand that you already did what is called disclosure. Refer them to the people who have authority. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون. Who is the Ahl al-Dhikr? The Ahl al-Dhikr is the Ahl al-Quran, the Ahl al-Sunnah. The people of knowledge, the fuqaha, the ulama, refer them to those responsible people. They will get responsible answers. That's the best way for us to do until we create our own media. Sister says, I think a sister, you obviously spoke Arabic or understand the language. Does one need to learn the language to be a better Muslim? Listen, let me say this to you. The sister who asked this question, or any Muslim, a person that goes to a doctor that already understands something about medical procedures would be a better patient. A person that goes to a pharmacist that knows something about the language of pharmacology will be a much better person that takes the medicine. So obviously Islam, the sources of Islam, it came down. The wahi, the revelation came in Arabic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyya la'alakum ta'akilun. Verily we revealed this Quran in an Arabic language, a clear and prospective Arabic language, in order to benefit the aql, the mind. So the Arabic language will increase our understanding of Islam, understand our understanding of the Quran, of the Sunnah, and increase our understanding and ability to transfer it, because that is the formula. So yes, every Muslim who learns the formula, even in a small amount, and my knowledge of the Arabic language is probably just in the small amount, on a scale of maybe 1 to 10, maybe my knowledge of the Arabic language is a 3 or 4. But that allows me at least to transfer some things, to appreciate some things, to understand some things a little bit more. And for me to get to the 4, 5, 6, or 7, I go to people who have better knowledge of the Arabic language. But I don't say that a person has to have knowledge of the Arabic language to be a good Muslim. No, they do not have it. They do not. Islam is not set like that. Minimally, to perform the prayer, one has to know what? Al-Fatiha. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Fatiha, there's no salah without Al-Kitab. Al-Kitab is Fatiha. So if you can recite the 7 verses of Al-Fatiha in the Arabic formula, you can complete your prayer, minimally. But that doesn't say you should leave it there. No, you must continue to understand the fiqh of the salah. You must understand the other rules of the salah. From that you need to seek knowledge. Seeking the knowledge means in the language. Seeking the knowledge means from the sources. But it is not the issue that we have to become Arabized to become good Muslims, or that Arabs have some kind of special position in Islam. That is not the case, because some of the major scholars of Islam after Muhammad ﷺ and the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, some of the major scholars of Islam, they was not Arabs at all. But it didn't mean that they didn't have knowledge of the Arabic language. So let's not put these two things together, a good Muslim and the Arabic language. No, a good Muslim is from here, from the heart. Have the good understanding and good practice, good morals, good intentions. But all of that will be complemented and cause you to move up in the darajat of knowledge if you have command of the Arabic language. It says, and what about if a doctor is a man and he has to get in contact with women as a patient? Look, the Muslim man, a Muslim doctor, why would he want to be a gynecologist? I mean, why would a Muslim man, with all the medical choices that he has, why would he want to be a gynecologist? Well, in Islam, we do not put the morals before the money. Why would a man he want to be staring at ladies' private parts, handling women, putting his hand up inside women? Why would he want to be going through all of that if he has taqwa, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there is 99 branches of medicine he can enter? Why he enter that one? No, no, no. Generally speaking, the Muslim doctor would not go that route unless he's not practicing his religion, or maybe he don't have taqwa, or if in that area, that place, there are no Muslims to be able to deal with that problem. Because if that man was skilled as a gynecologist and there were issues relative to women that were very critical, and he was the only one that could deal with it, whether from a point of surgery or from a point of treatment or analysis or whatever, if he was the only one to do it, again, who would have to do it? He would have to do it. But generally speaking, in New Zealand, we don't have that kind of problem. So I would say, generally speaking, the Muslim doctor, he would not choose to be a gynecologist in New Zealand with all the different ways. There should be women, doctors for women. And that poses another question. The Muslim man, when your wife becomes pregnant, should you take your wife to the hospital and just have any kind of doctor examining her, prenatal examination and stuff like that? The answer is absolutely no. You must go to the hospital, and when you find out she's pregnant, you must say to the hospital, I'm a Muslim, and we're Muslims, and she can only be exposed to a Muslim lady, to a lady doctor. Not a Muslim doctor, but a lady. But sometimes we find that Muslims themselves bring their wives to the hospital. And the doctor just comes out and he says to her, oh, hello, Mr. Muhammad. How you doing? Oh, hello, Mr. Muhammad. Oh, Mr. Muhammad, sit down over there in the waiting room. I'll see you in a minute. Mrs. Muhammad, Go in there and get undressed. I'll be right back. Wait a minute. I mean, some of the Muslims, they don't want their Muslim brother to say salam to their wife. You know, I say, see the sister, salam alaikum, sister. He said, stop, Akhi, why are you saying salam to my wife? You know what I mean? The brothers, they don't want us to even say salam to their wife. But then the wife goes to the hospital, and he sit down over there, and the doctor says, Miss Muhammad, take off your clothes, I'll be right back. What's going on here? No. The rule should be that we have the right to our sensitivities, and we should ask, not just ask, but we should insist that when our wives are examined, they are examined by female doctors. And that when a man comes into my wife when she's in the hospital, that he is told, hold it, doc. Wait a moment. My wife is not dressed yet. Give her a chance to put herself together, that he can come in and he can write down his notes and all of that there, and she's not exposed. But many times the Muslims themselves are not observing this rule, so their wives are exposed, and you can't blame the people, because I have went to the hospitals and said that about my wife. They said, well, what are you making a big deal? All these other Muslims is coming in here, nobody else said that about that. Who are you, special? I said, yeah, my wife is special and I'm special. And if this hospital will not, you understand me, acquiesce to this rule, I'll find another hospital, even if I got to travel a day. And my wife and I got to live somewhere else. We're going to find a place where there is a female gynecologist, where there's a female, you understand me, doctor, where there's a female that's going to deliver that child. And alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every single time we have insisted, we have found Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave us, you understand me, what we asked for. So Muslims, it is not just their fault, it is sometimes our fault. We booked this place until 5 minutes ago. So that means we are over the time. All right. So I'm going to answer one more question, and that means we got to be out of here. I'm sorry. Said, I am a Muslim woman who loves my career. Sometimes I feel I have to joke with my male colleagues and build rapport with them so that they will complete a task for me. My question is, how can I go? How far can I go in my career and yet not against my Islamic principles? Sister, listen. You got to do the best job that you can do without violating the issues of hijab, without violating the issues of protocol, without violating the issues of your morals. You know how far you can go. Use your heart. If you got the trust of your husband and you got the trust of yourself and you feel Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to carry your influence within your the atmosphere of your company or the atmosphere of your place of work to the best of your ability. However, if you believe in your heart that you are compromising something, if you think you went over the top, you will know it inside your heart. Follow your heart, sister. Do not sacrifice your family. Do not sacrifice your morals. Do not sacrifice your principles. Do not compromise your hijab for the job that you have. I don't care what it pays. But you be the judge of that, and you let your husband be the judge of that, and don't let anybody else be the judge of that. That's all I can say to you about that. Brothers, sorry. The sister took up all the time. But after all, it was the sisters' evening anyway. So the brothers, they will have another session of the critical issues regarding men. We want to thank all of you for being patient, especially the non-Muslims who stayed or those who were here previously. We want to thank the media. We want to thank all the sisters. We want to thank all the brothers. And we want to thank all the children. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and that one. All of them. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.